I might get in trouble from copyright. Okay, so let's go back to YouTube, and let's go to my channel. Let's go to my channel. Can someone confirm that I'm streaming? You see it or no? Is it under the old one or the new one? So you see two separate ones from today's lesson? So is it under the old one or the new one? You see a new one. Okay, great. Yeah. Taylor, you see two separate ones from today's lesson? When I grow up, I want to be like you. So is it under the old one or the new one? You see a new one. No, it's okay, great. Yeah. Taylor, you see two separate ones from today's lesson? When I grow up, I want to be like you. So is it under the old one or the new one? You see a new one. No, it's okay, great. Yeah. Taylor, you see two separate ones from today's lesson? When I grow up, I want to be like you. So is it under the old one or the new one? You see a new one. No, it's okay, great. Yeah. Taylor, you see two separate ones from today's lesson? When I grow up, I want to be like you. So is it under the old one or the new one? You see a new one. No, it's okay, great. Yeah. Taylor, you see two separate ones from today's lesson? When I grow up, I want to be like you. So is it under the old one or the new one? Clear. All right, we're back. Okay, great. Yeah. Taylor, you see two separate ones? The next thing we're going to do, so we talked about functions. The next thing we're going to do is talk about variables. Clear. All right, we're back. Yeah. Taylor, you see two separate ones? The next thing we're going to do, so we talked about functions. The next thing we're going to do is talk about variables. Clear. All right, we're back. Yeah. Taylor, you see two separate ones? Can you hear me? Is everything good for the timing of the variable? Clear. All right, we're back. The sound's messed up again? You see two separate ones? Can you hear me? Is everything good for the timing of the variable? Clear. All right, we're back. The sound's messed up again? I'm going to have to reset. Can you hear me? Is everything good for the timing of the variable? Clear. All right, we're back. The sound's messed up again? I'm going to have to reset. Can you hear me? Do you hear me? Did anybody hear me on? Yeah, it's okay. So it might be just his computer. I'm going to have to reset. Can you hear me? All right. So let's. Do you hear me? Did anybody hear me on? Yeah, it's okay. So it might be just his computer. I'm going to have to reset. Can you hear me? All right. So let's about defining variables. Do you hear me? Anybody hear me on? Yeah, it's okay. So it might be just his computer. I'm going to have to reset. But we're going to get official now. So let's about defining variables. Do you hear me? Anybody hear me on? Yeah, it's okay. So it might be just his computer. I'm going to have to reset. But we're going to get official now. So let's how that is. Maybe it's because I'm listening to my own live stream. Let's try that. I don't know, to be honest with you. I forget how to do that. Audio. Oh, mic. Maybe this one. Properties.
It's gone now.
Yeah, it's good? Okay, great. Don't give up on me. Someday I'm going to be cool when I'm dead. All right. Yeah, let's do this one. All right, so we're going to talk about defining variables. So variables in MATLAB. And quote-unquote variable in comp sci and computer programming. Many of you know this already, but there's no prerequisite on this class. I have at least one person that has taken no computer science classes ever. So I'm going to go through the basics. For those of you that this is review, how great. We'll just be stronger for that. So every variable we're going to think about as having 3 attributes. So number 1 is going to be called a specific storage location. So the idea is when I define a variable, MATLAB in the background will have a location in memory. So this is going to be, this includes a predefined fixed length sequence of binary digits. Anybody know how to say binary digits in a slicker form? Bits, yeah. Bits is bytes is a sequence of 8 bits, which we'll talk about in a bit. And an exact address to these bits in memory. So, whole idea is when I define a variable, how many attributes do I have? 3. First attribute I'm going to have us think about is a specific location in memory. And then this right here, we'll talk more about the idea of a sequence of bits in a little bit. The amount of storage is data class dependent. Depends on the type of variable. Can anybody guess what I'm about to say? So there are different types of variables that I can declare. MATLAB has 16 native variable types or data classes. Each data class has a different predefined length. Can you guess what int 8, how many bits int 8 is stored in? 8 bits, 1 byte. Can you guess what int 64 is stored in? 64 bits, 16 bytes, right? Can you guess what a double is? Not as easy, huh? 64. Can you guess what a single is? Probably half of a double. We'll talk more about that, but the whole concept is when we define a variable, we're going to think about a variable as 3 separate attributes linked together. First attribute I want you all to think about is the concept of a specific storage location, and that storage location has 2 different types of information. What are they? Fixed length sequence of bits and an address to that location, right? And we'll talk more about both the idea of a fixed length sequence of bits and the address. So that's the first thing. Let's do the next one. Okay. So the second attribute of every variable stored in MATLAB. Second attribute of every variable stored in MATLAB is going to be what we call a user-defined. And to be honest with you, I kind of wish James had created this language because we could call it a DIY or a programmer-defined symbolic name. this quote-unquote name is used as a convenient reference to the variable in quote-unquote future code. And that future code may happen in the workspace, but it can also happen in script files. For sure, before I reference it, I have to declare the variable, which we'll talk about in a bit. But the whole concept is it allows me as a programmer to not have to reference the address location, which is a very computer thing to do. It allows me to write it in something that makes sense to me as a human, right? Yeah, Jessica.
I'm just curious, where does the memory of like the name of the variable go? Are they right next to each other in memory, or?
I actually don't know the answer to how MATLAB does this. I'm guessing that it's probably somewhere in the cache registers. I don't know if it relates to ROM. Anybody have some free time and a genuine curiosity about the inner workings of MATLAB? We will, to be honest with you, this is one of the things that I've always wanted to do. I've wanted to crack MATLAB open. It is a proprietary software. So MATLAB does not always open its inner guts to the standard user. When I was in my PhD program, we had many of students that were going through get picked off by MathWork for internships to write new code. So some of the code written in MATLAB's native functions was written by some of my colleagues. This is true. Yeah, it's kind of cool. But what I found is that documentation only goes surface deep, in my opinion. One of the things that I want to train my students to do is try to get answers to this from the internal workings, as at least to what they'll be willing to give us. I don't know how MATLAB manages the communication between itself and the operating system. The real answer to your question has to do with how MATLAB interacts with and appropriates memory from the computer's internal operating system, right? And that it actually goes deeper into the hardware level. I don't have answers to those questions. I too yearn so badly to know that. The best answers that I've got are, leave us alone, kid, this is proprietary, right? But if we poke hard enough, I bet you the bear will notice us. Great question, Jessica. Yeah? Okay. So the other thing that I'm going to say is variable names, quote-unquote names, can be made from a combination, what I might call combo, of letters and symbols. Okay, here's another research project for you. Please, right now, find the list of rules for assigning variable names. Not in my notes, because they're there for you. We'll call this position 0. We'll call this position 1. We'll call this position 2. You should always erase position 2. And move 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 0. So modular 3 arithmetic, I suppose. I just wrote a program. Okay, you got it? Okay. So Nick gets my fastest gunslinger award for today because he was the first person I watched do this. How do I get to that, Nick? So up here, and then type in. Oh, so you clicked right here? Variable space names. And then what did you do? I'm going to ask you to say this, right? Because I've done all of this, but does it matter how much I've done? Assuming that I know how to code in MATLAB, it doesn't, right? What matters? That you all know how to do it, and I want to show you that people in this class, live in front of you, are doing better work than I'm doing. Okay. Okay, so what are some of the rules having to do with creating variable names, I'm going to give you, I don't know, 4 minutes, 6 minutes. Go ahead and read. 5 minutes. Shall we start our first 5-minute rule? Let's do it. I'm going to set a 5-minute timer for you. My suggestion is that you take notes. A really great way to learn something is to write it down. So I'm going to set a 5-minute timer. At the end of that 5 minutes, I expect you to be farther than you are now into your learning of what variable names mean. I suppose yeah. Say that again. MATLAB is written in C. L3 cache. I cannot confirm or refute what you've just said, but let's use this as a starting point. Okay, so let's do this. So let me finish this first, and then I'm going to write up what you just said, and then we will all have a chance. Yeah. So let me write this first, and then I'm going to capture what you just said. Thank you so much. This is awesome. So let's search help. So MATLAB help. Quote, variable name. And click on first article. Details. Okay. And then Colin, let me document what you just said. Where did you find that? What articles? So this is Wikipedia? I donated $15 this year, I think, to Wikipedia. It might have been 10.
Yeah. Wikipedia, MATLAB, you look at the history.
Let me do this with you. So, okay, so you're telling me that if I go to my okay, so now I go to, I guess, DuckDuckGo. Yeah. Google, leave me alone. So let's do DuckDuckGo, privacy. And then, how do I do this again? I want to use DuckDuckGo as my primary browser. Sorry, search engine. Where do you see that? Okay, so customize. Do you see it? Okay, let's go back. Options. Okay, and then I suppose search would be this one, right? Default search engine, DuckDuckGo. And that gives Google my feeling about whether or not I like them tracking my stuff. Goodbye, Twitter. I do not have a Twitter. I don't have an Instagram. I don't have a Facebook. Every one of those programs can leave me alone. Okay, so now I have done that. Okay, so now what did you tell me to search?
I just searched MATLAB and looked at the Wikipedia page.
Did you do MATLAB wiki or something?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Oh, cool. My PhD is in this subfield right now. I met James Demmel, who is one of the authors. I was in his office. He kicked me out. There is code written in MATLAB that was written by my advisor. I plan to do some work in my next 20 years to change MATLAB a little bit. Had I wanted it, I'm sure I could have gotten hired at Google Labs or Cadence. My stuff was in, my PhD thesis was written in a field called numerical linear algebra, model order reduction, Krylov subspace methods. Most people in that field go get a lot of money. My feeling is that we can do a lot better in teaching, and so I've decided to do this. Almost every name on this I recognize as people that I've read. This is alive. Okay, that was 5 minutes of reading. Okay, so then what did you do there? So now that we're here.
I just looked at it, it says that if you go in that lab, C, or go put on C, it takes you to the page, programming language, and as you go down to memory management, section 6. Section 6 tells you that you use static memory allocation, automatic memory allocation, and
Oh, cool. Yeah, Calic, Malik. That's awesome. I remember this. So I'm not sure that just because it was written in C means that it's currently written in C. That's an open question. I don't know if that's true.
It's all an assumption, and since it's proprietary, it's not like I can break into it without getting sued.
Yes, somebody knows the answer to this question, but I love the ingenuity. I love how ingenious you were there. So we have a conjecture that is going to be unconfirmed or refuted. So the conjecture is the following. So we conjecture that MATLAB is written in C. So these are open research questions in C. And we also conjecture that memory, thus, variable memory. Say that one more time. Yeah, I would guess it would be dynamic if if this is indeed written in C, I would guess that there's a Calic or Malik or some equivalent, because this is definitely not pre-compiled memory, right? So variable memory. L3 cache, you said?
L3 is the most common.
Okay.
Outside of that, they don't have.
So we're trying to answer your question, right? Yeah. So these are conjectures. We don't know if this is true. For those of you advanced students that want to get deep into this, I invite you to find good answers to these questions for the current version of MATLAB and come back with them next time. All of this is dessert. What did your mom say about dessert and vegetables? First, you must eat your veggie. I want to live in your house. First, you must, actually, I like vegetables a lot. First, you must eat your vegetables before you get to eat your dessert. What does that mean in the context of this class?
Well, stuff you have to eat before you eat stuff.
That's interesting. You do not get to touch a single conjecture. I hope that every one of us comes up with conjectures this class. This stuff is beyond surface level. As you come up with those conjectures, we'll try to track those, but you do not get to answer those conjectures until you've finished all of your homework. At that point, your time is yours. You do whatever you want with it, right? Okay, so we now have user-defined function is 3 things. What are the 3 things? Number 1 was memory address and a length of bits. Number 2 was a symbolic name defined by the user. Rules are written. I expect you to know those rules, even though I didn't say it out loud. And then the third one was what? The third one was what we called an assigned value. So number 3 is going to be what we call an assigned value. This quote-unquote value is what we call bound to the variable when executing the commands. When executing commands or expressions, in MATLAB. So one thing that I'll say is the value is an encoded sequence of bits. And then we're going to learn to think about bits as voltage values, quite literally. Stored in the fixed length sequence. You see what I'm telling you, that I'm not going to teach you syntax because you can learn that on your own, but I'm going to teach you how to think about this. Do you see it? It's a different version of thinking about learning, one that I think will empower you to make money with MATLAB if you want it. Okay. So this goes here. Here. Where's my phone? Yeah, I still got a little bit of time. So, when we define a variable in MATLAB, a few things happen. MATLAB, the actual environment, allocates appropriate memory, allocates memory to that variable. And then the second thing is, behind the scenes, so this is both behind the scenes, MATLAB transforms the character string from either the workspace or a script file into an appropriate binary representation. Binary representation, and stores that binary representation, into memory. This is a lot for some of you. Which means one of the fundamental things to understand what's happening with variables is to do what? If I really want you to understand what's happening with MATLAB variables, can you guess one of the things that I might focus on? What the hell is a binary representation? So, if it's okay with you, I'm going to go till around the hour. We're going to take a 10-minute break. When we start our lab at 12:10, I have some updates for you. And then the rest of the lab, you can work on those updates. Yeah, I guess the last thing that I'll do before I actually start writing code again, there's a lot of theory, but I want to start it off well. Let's see, so this one goes to 1. This is frustrating. The last thing we're going to do is to talk about what we've already talked about last time. which is to declare a variable, we use a very specific syntax. So syntax to declare a variable. Okay, so we use variable underscore name. You will see that I absolutely love the underscore for in replacement of a space. For me, those are very readable. Some people disagree. I've seen a lot of people also do this one. Capitalize the first letter of every word in the variable name. So variable name. There is some benefit to the second one. How would I know that this is a user-defined variable and not a MATLAB native variable? Because the first letter is capitalized, right? So either of those works. My tendency is this one because I'm an old man that has a hard time changing. So on this side, we're going to say, in the early part of this class, a numeric value or computable expression. Later, I don't know if we're going to get to this quarter. By the time that I finish my development on this class, we will hit all of the 16 native classes, some of which are strings, some of which are characters. I don't think we're going to do that this time. So this is going to be the left-hand side. Left-hand side of the operator. What did we call that? That thing is the assignment operator. The assignment operator tells MATLAB to do those three things. So when MATLAB parses that character, it sets aside memory location, it creates a specific length bit, it gives the variable name, like stores that as a handle, and then it also assigns whatever thing is on the right-hand side to the location by doing a binary representation. This thing we'll call the right-hand side. This is governed by our rules. You found in documentation. And I do expect you to read the entire thing so that you know. Okay, that's enough theory, I believe, on this stuff. Should we start breaking stuff? Yeah, one of my favorite things to do in life and in MATLAB is break what other people designed to figure out what the limits are. So let's go ahead and break this. Let's say 1 try equals 5. What happened? Yep. Let's say I like to break stuff equals 0. What happened? I use spaces. Let's say this, control, delete, this is better, equals 1. Okay? Every single time, so let's go ahead and format loose. Let's try again. The moment I say this is better gets 1, MATLAB does a few things. If I do not specify the type of variable, it will always store as a double. Right? How would I know that it stores as a double? Over here, I get to determine what it will do. Let's go ahead and choose columns. Do you see when I see class? So if I type class, that will tell me what type of data this is. For a little bit of fun, just go ahead and type format hex. Now type the number 1. That is a hexadecimal representation of the binary representation of the number 1 in IEEE 754 format. Check this out. If I typecast that in a different data class, I get a fundamentally different type of representation. Let me repeat this for those of you that didn't understand. This is a set of code that displays the actual physical sequence of bits of voltage values at the core level of memory that stores the number 1. Each data class that I use, so if I use int 8, 1. Let's do int 16, 1. These are all different representations of the number 1. Let's do single 1. Let's do, I don't even know if I'm allowed to do this. That's fun. Meaning that what's actually stored in memory is a set of bits that encodes the type of data I'm claiming to encode. It's much more interesting than we think, right? So what is every variable? Let me repeat that. How many attributes, every single time I declare a variable in MATLAB, how many attributes are attached to that variable? 3. What are they? Variable name, symbolic name that we choose. So in this case, we might call variable name equals 5. Okay, so the variable name, oh, crud. Do you see this? That's giving me a hexadecimal representation of the actual stored sequence of bits. We're not ready for that. Can you guess which lessons those are going to be? 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. You all will know stuff that was created in 1984. You're going to study stuff in this class, science, that was created in 1984. You will know more about data representations in MATLAB than most grad students and some professors. That's my gift to you. You don't have to pay me a cent more for that, by the way. Right? So, first thing, we have a symbolic variable name. What else is attached to a MATLAB variable? A memory address, a memory location. We're not sure about that. There's some open questions that we have. In addition to the memory address, what else? A fixed length set of bits into which we're going to write memory. We'll talk more about sequence of bits. We're going to talk about voltage values and what that means in a bit, right? But the idea is that there's these things that you can either turn off and on. There's a sequence of them. For int 64, can you guess how many bits? 64 bits. So we have a symbolic name for the user. We have a memory address attached to a sequence of bits. And then what was the third thing? An assigned value, meaning that when we go to that address, if we have 64 bits, every one of those bits is either going to be on or off. And in that memory location, we're going to set for the rest of time what those values are going to be. Right? So that, every single time I do this, all of that is happening in the background. Oh, I can go back to format short, and then I can type A, and that's the normal representation. I want to say this. When we read this, the workspace represents an ASCII is character display. This is how humans think about that, right? When I say the number 5, what does that mean to you? The number 5. This format hex is how a computer thinks about that. So you can think about it as a machine code representation of the assigned value. I want you to know how to do both. I want you to understand that at a gut level so that as you're coding, you have a deep understanding of what's happening internally to MATLAB. One thing that I'll say is we are not allowed to use keywords. So the last thing we're going to talk about today, and then we'll stop. Can you go ahead and do help keywords? Sorry. Let's do Nick's thing. Say it again. Yep. Oh yeah. That's right. Of course. So if we type in is keyword, can you guess what is keyword means? So let's go ahead and try to set 4 equal to 4. What just happened there? The word for is predefined in MATLAB for something called a for loop, which means when I set a variable, if I give the variable name, the symbolic name, lowercase f OR, MATLAB says you can't do that. But I could do what? So I can't actually use keywords to store variables. Second thing in documentation is all about keywords. You can read much more about what keywords are. I don't think this is the right format. And then the last thing that I'm going to do today is point you to an online list that I expect you to read. And yes. So if you scroll down to page 68 in these notes. There it is. You don't see what I see, do you? So if you go to online notes, click on today's lesson, there is a set of predefined. These are also things that I would highly suggest do not store variables using these names. Can you guess what pi does? Yep. I and j store complex numbers. I think you can overwrite these. I don't think these are, like, I could store stuff in clock, date, eps. I can define those, but if you do that, you're going to be overriding MATLAB's natively defined variables in that. One way to avoid this problem completely is just always start your variable names with a capital. That's one way to deal with that, right? Last thing, and then we'll stop today. Sorry, you see me working. I'm not working. If I type whose, can you guess what whose does? Whose tells me all the variables that I got, but it also gives me extra information. What if I just type who without the S? It's just a list of. I like whose with the S. Let's go ahead and clear the variable 4. And let's type in whose again. Notice that this time my variable stored in memory does not include the variable 4 because I cleared it. Before we end for today and start our lab in 10 minutes, let's go ahead and clear all variables. Let's clear our workspace. Let's type in whose and confirm that the workspace is indeed empty, which we now have 2 separate ways to do that. And then we'll take a 10-minute break. We'll start again at 12:10, at which point I have a few pieces of information about the lab, and then today you're going to work on your lab. So at 12:14, be back in this room. 12:14, we're going to start lab today, and I have some specific updates for you about lab 2.
More candy.
Say it again.
More candy for asking comments. I'd suggest people who have questions for memory or more computer-oriented questions should look up the YouTube channel called Computer Pile. It's run by one of the British institutions.
Oh, cool.
And they have professors come up and they do lectures on the nitty-pitty little bits in computers.
Oh, cool. Can you, right now my brain is not processing that. At 12:15, I'm going to do a little bit of talking. Don't let me start talking until I've put this particular item on my list.
Okay.
Because I will update if there's stuff that I can update the online website, and then we can also as a team find it as a class.
Okay.
Yeah, part of what we're going to do in this class is shared learning, and these type of discoveries are so powerful that I want, like that same thing that you did on day 1 where you showed how to use the .edu, like I want to start sending the message that we should share this with each other.
Sure.
Yeah, so
I'll
if
do
you're
a whole
at
bunch
12:15,
like
you
that.
let me know, okay? Yeah. Hi, Henry.
I have a question about what means X created here to be seen. Start up to. Do we need to submit to BC, like the one on the website?
We'll talk about that in just a bit. I'll have full detail for you, Jean. Yeah, it's good to see you, my friend. Say it again. Stop stream.